Welcome to Anthropoid Ethos, episode 26. Today's guest is Andrea Maffioli, a partner at Copperfield Gallery in London since 2022, and also a collector of mainly underrepresented artists, especially installation and sculpture, mid-career and emergent, no? Is what
Absolutely, yes.
What I understand.
With very strong teams too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you find yourself in Mexico? What happened? Why are you here? What's going on?
Well, look, the first time I came to Mexico was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
To create an exhibition in San Miguel de Allende. I have a friend with a gallery there in Fabrica La Aurora that is a bit commercial as a situation, it's a bit touristy. And we studied together in London, and we thought, like, what happens if we bring a conceptual artist from London in that environment? And so we did. The exhibition was a success, and I fell in love with Mexico. Okay. So since then, I started coming every year, at least once a year, especially in January and February, to bring artists to a residency and then show them a material art fair. But this time, I'm here in particular for Condo.
Condo, yes. And I mean, the project, if we can give some context, basically means that a gallery from somewhere international comes and exchanges the space with a Mexican gallery. And that's very interesting because it has created, I think, a new flux of people that are coming in a different time of the year that is not February for like Art Week in Mexico City. It's very intense. And I think it spreads out quite nicely in the year, no?
Oh, absolutely. And it helps also other galleries to discover the region, discover the local collectors without having to commit to an art fair that, of course, bears different kind of cost.
Yeah.
So it was very, very interesting. Then every gallery did it in a different way. Some galleries hosted a gallery and just the artworks of that gallery. Some others, they split the space. So it was very creative and a lot of good exhibitions in town.
Yeah, and you exchanged the space with Third Born.
Yeah.
A new gallery, an emergent gallery in Mexico City.
Yeah, Third Born is a young gallery, probably 1 year and a half, 2 years now. But I always really loved the program, and I followed them since the very, very beginning of the gallery. Mm-hmm. And so when this Condo project started happening and they invited us to come here in Mexico, we decided immediately to actually do a show together.
Cool.
Instead of just us bringing one artist, we decided to create a dialogue in between two artists, one working with Third Born and one working with Copperfield.
Okay.
And so we created this very interesting dialogue in between photographer sculptor from Lithuania, Vytautas Kumza, that then later on we're going to present at Liste, and Mariana Ledesma, very interesting sound-based artist from Guanajuato.
So, and why? I mean, you have a distinct focus towards installation and conceptual works and sculpture. Why is it important for you that this is shown, and why, I mean, underrepresented artists, perhaps that's important to give as a context?
Well, that comes from the fact that someone working with sculpture and installation is already making their life more difficult rather than painting that, of course,
sure. What sells the most?
Yeah, it's predominantly, it's not only easier to sell and to collect, but it's also easier to transport in most cases, to paint, to store, to keep during time. So there are a lot of things that make painting, of course, like one of the oldest also, like art techniques. But we're interested in those artists that they want to say something in a different way. And I think that, like, with installation, sculpture, video perhaps at times as well, there is a certain relationship in between the artwork and the viewer that you cannot necessarily obtain with a painting.
Yeah. Super
And
different.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. Even just the fact that it's like more three-dimensional, or that it comes out of the surface of the wall. So that's what we find very, very interesting. And also because since the inception, the gallery, Copperfield, decided to work with artists that are underrepresented and coming from a difficult social and economical background.
Okay.
And so for someone coming from that background and also willing and wanting to do sculptures and installations, that shows like a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
And in general, the artworks that come out from that are very, very powerful.
Yeah. Well, so you like to make your life difficult.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they also like to make their life difficult.
Exactly.
So it's like
We're this together.
coinciding in the difficult world.
Exactly.
Okay. It's interesting, yeah. I mean, what type of other artists historically sort of remind you to this, let's say, mixed techniques that you think of? Of course, we can say like Man Ray or someone like Duchamp, of course.
Yeah, historically, new media or like unexpected artworks, they always caused a stir, but then eventually they were the ones who changed the art world, or in some cases the world as we know it. So from like also Brancusi in some situations with his Uso d'Espace. So I think that of course I love painting too. And I did collect a lot of paintings, and I think that when you really connect personally with a painting, is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
So nothing against painting, but of course there is an inherent power in sculpture that can touch even more, I think, certain people and change even more your perception of objects as well.
Yeah.
So, for example, we work with one artist called Tai Locke, and he, which I presented actually in Mexico last year during Material, that he changes common objects into something else. So he made an artwork that was a floppy knife. So he cut a knife into pieces and then put them back together, and it's like this like floppy knife. And since then, I cannot look at a knife without thinking about like that floppy knife.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
There's more humor.
There is also humor, irony, but it's also like somehow sexualized as an object. But I think there is such a powerful statement in an artwork that changes your view of the world or part of the world. And so I think that in that case, sculpture and installation has this like power.
Yeah, and I do feel also that different artists, and I mean, of course, the audience that looks at these works connects to the medium in a way that it opens up a world for them, you know, because I feel like, for example, I mean, I absolutely adore painting. To me, it's like wonderful. If I were to make something, it would be for sure not a painting, no? It would be more like a sculpture and so I think about this sort of perhaps a touch towards sculpture and installation. And I mean, I think in the end, like the version of sculptures that were historically made, let's go back to maybe your old fellow Romans, you know, but they would allow people to touch the sculptures, you know, and it wasn't a thing that you should only observe. It makes no sense for a sculpture to only be observed. You know,
you know? But also, like, it's not really common knowledge. It was surprising to me, but like Roman and Greek sculptures were colorful.
Yes, of course,
so
of course.
They were completely mad colors.
Exactly.
I love like also that how it changed over time. Like now they're considered these epitomes of like beauty and the idea of beauty, whilst at the time they were what I guess today we will consider a bit like tacky in a way. You know,
kitsch.
Kitsch. Exactly. Exactly. But
do you think that, I mean, how do you see that aspect, that historical aspect that we've come to believe a lie or a myth that has been created out of perhaps archaeology, you know, or things that have been found, and this notion of beauty in our romance of the return sort of has that character of homogeneous pigment almost, you know, like as in it's marble and that's it, and you shouldn't put anything on it, because today I feel also maybe you can do something with it, or people already do, where installation and sculpture actually add pigment to all of the thing, because I do believe that we live in an art world, or a world itself, that has I guess tended to go towards the gray, or towards white, or towards black, or towards these sort of nonchalant colors, in my opinion, you know. So how do you see that? Like, I mean, there's a lot of aspects, but
that's very interesting, because I was reading an article about it that was analyzing the color of cars throughout different eras, and you can definitely see how much gray, white and black and dark gray increased a lot, to the point that now it's very difficult to find like a yellow car or a red car unless it's a Ferrari. But from the beginning of your question about like the Romance culture, I think it's interesting, because now a few artists I noticed in many different ways and in different practices, but they use this technique of removing completely every single color, every distraction that the color can provide, to just focus on the object itself. Like even Edmund de Waal installation at Art Basel Statement a few years ago, and then he went on to create more installations like that. I think they're absolutely incredible. But at the base, they are a reconstruction of rooms. What makes them incredibly interesting and alienating is that everything is monochrome. And so once you remove all the distraction provided by the color, you're just left with shape and shadow. And it makes you focus even more on the object itself.
Well, I mean, I will have to clash with you a bit there. Because for me, I think it might be a very North Atlantic European version of shape, and what is the real form of things. Whereas I feel that, you know, in a Mexican context, even though I do see some artists that are influenced from the Netherlands, for example, doing that idea, I feel like, is it really the case? You know, is it really the case that color is a distraction? Or is it the other way around? Or is it, you know? But I just want to create play devil's advocate.
No,
here,
but it's true. And also because it's extremely cultural as well, as a form of perception as well, right? Like, I mean, here in Mexico, and that's also why I love it so much, you are even more accustomed to colors. You're less afraid of colors. I mean, you literally walk on the street and every house is a different color. In Europe, to find something like that, it usually becomes like a tourist trap or a touristic attraction. You go to Portobello in London and literally you go there just because the houses are different colors. Here you do like 2 steps wherever, Condesa, Roma, San Miguel Chapultepec, but even like down south in the city, and it's like that, it's normality.
Your beloved Coyoacán.
It's normality. So it's true that it's very, very cultural as a perception, but nonetheless, I still think that color in general, it is either enhancement or distraction or decoration for something already existing.
Interesting. Well, I mean, we are like on top of a Mexican ceiling right now, which has this protection against water. And if you pass by with an airplane, all of Mexico looks red on top. And it's very strange because, of course, this is used for a lot of buildings that are incomplete, for example, but also, so maybe the theory fits in there. However, it became a norm here that it should be red. And red is our grade, perhaps.
True. Absolutely.
It's I find it an interesting conundrum. Also because different artists, for example, that I've talked to in the podcast itself, have mentioned that in Mexico, but they might be Austrian or they might be from England and so on. When they arrive to Mexico, it's almost like they see more color I mean, of course, there's more color, but it's also because of a physical event where frequencies around the equator are actually more intense, no? And so, in a way, yes, they are discovering color, and perhaps us as well when we travel from north to south or equator, really. So yeah, I think we can, in the end, at least in my view, question this notion of like, is it that gray? You know, it's also a frequency. It's also a
No, that for sure. And I came across that actually. Well, yeah, a lot of artists that come here to Mexico and they say like, "Oh, the light is incredible. The light is beautiful," especially when they come from like London, where it's like gray, the sky, or the Netherlands. But I came across this when I worked. I think it was 8 years ago with an artist from New Zealand, and he was telling me that in New Zealand the ozone layer is thinner. And so the colors are brighten up. It's almost like a filter on Instagram. Like that I've never been to New Zealand, so I don't know how. But apparently, yes, the colors are very, very nice. And in fact, his paintings were very, very bright colors.
Yeah. And also, I mean, there's a few theories. I mean, just to nerd out a bit, at least in philosophy, you have these mimetic theories, and it is perhaps there's a chance where we imitate our surroundings. No, we much like other animals have camouflage. We also imitate. If it's gray, it's gray. Or if it's, I guess here there's a lot of green as well. But,
that happens to.
And maybe New Zealand
most of the artists coming in a residency here in Mexico, I see it happening a lot of times. Well, the last was with Ty Locke last year. Material, he never used colors in his practice. He was very afraid of colors and brands. He was very afraid of colors and brands. He was mainly using common objects, but not the colorful one. No, let's say. When he came here, already after a couple of weeks here, he's like a sponge. Then he started creating these works that were. Imagine stained glass windows for churches, cathedrals, made with food containers, and instead of the glass, tote bags, cutouts. And so brands and colors appeared in his works like super prominently. And that's because of living here and like being here and experiencing all that and then kind of like normalizing it. I guess.
Yeah, adapting to the space. I took out a book. I want to show it to the camera.
Ooh.
There you go. Here. Okay. All right. So it's called Chromophobia by David Batchelor. And so it's literally this concern we're discussing, which I thought I can, which I find interesting. I mean, it's just I think an important discussion to have, of course, in the art world where, I mean, it's not all about color. For sure, it's about everything: materials, concepts, images. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's bidimensional, but yeah. I want to jump a bit towards perhaps you as you're Italian, born in Milano, and you are living in London. So how does a identity, which for me in the European sense tends to be the warmer identity of Europe, how does that clash for you, being in a place of utilitarianism, basically this London version of efficiency, basically, that exists? How do you feel, perhaps, in the art scene in London? How have you accommodated yourself in this sector?
Well, already coming from Milan, that is possibly the most efficient city in Italy.
Known for it.
Known
for design and known for
known for also the efficiency. So, and I had a soft landing in London because before I lived for 8 months in Southampton. Which is a city by the sea in the UK. I felt more like the English way in Southampton rather than in London. London, when I moved there 13 years ago, was so incredibly international that I had very few friends that are actually English. I'm still do in a way. We all gather together from different nationalities, and we all bring in like our experiences in our culture in a very, very positive way. Now that is been changing a tiny bit because of Brexit and the pandemic and everything that is happening in London.
I wanted to discuss that, but maybe later we can
But
get into that.
but in London, I never felt out of place or felt oppressed by a different culture, because he was very, very open to everyone, and that's why I needed at the time to move there, and that's why I moved there. So the things that London gave me in the years that I moved there, I don't know if I would have been able to obtain them from any other city around the world.
Yeah, I think it's unique, and a lot of good art is being made today in London. I feel maybe even Brexit was a great thing that happened to art in London. Not sure collectors, but the money went out a bit. But I feel like the emergency or crisis created a nice melting pot, or not?
I don't know. I think that like at first, yes, also because maybe especially after the pandemic, there were a lot of like spaces that were much cheaper, and London didn't have a cheaper phase for a very long time. And so a lot of galleries started doing exhibitions that were a bit more daring. A lot of artists started experimenting even more. So that was kind of a very good renaissance. But unfortunately, I think that is coming down and fast, because right now in London, in the UK in general, if you are European, you now pay for art school the same fee as before it was extra European students, and they're very high. They are very, very high, and very few artists from Italy, France, Spain, Germany can afford it, because it's that on top of living in London, and then they need a visa to stay. So now what is happening is that a lot of schools, all the schools actually in London, that before were this melting pot that you were mentioning of like different culture coming together, creating very interesting artworks, because they were not only responding to being in London, but also responding to the people that were surrounding them. Now, unfortunately, is very different. Now, a lot of artists come from the same region, that are the very few in the world that can afford to come to London and study at that price. But then they don't get the visa, and so they then go back to their origin country. A few Americans as well, but then they have to go back to US. And so London is left a bit
isolated. No?
Yeah, I think in already from next year and in the coming years, we're gonna feel the effect of that more and more in terms of like emerging artists growing in London and creating a more London art scene. Yeah.
Okay. And how about in the way that you collect? How has perhaps the UK shaped a bit of your? I mean, we had a conversation the other day here on collecting and the market and so on. And I remember you were saying that you have actually only collected 2 pieces of Italian artists.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine an Italian would take out a whip, you know, and
I know. Is
because it's such a strong identity, I feel. So
yeah.
And there's of course awesome artists coming from Italy. So I imagine that it's an interesting version of your collection and what you're.
No, it's true. It's true. Also, it might be 3 or 4. It might be not actually 2. I don't know. I will have to like actually properly think about it.
Yeah.
But it's true that it's very, very little.
Okay.
I don't know how that happened. I guess is Well, in general, in Italy, in terms of collecting, I'm not saying I'm affected by it, but in general, in terms of collecting in Italy, I always notice a lot of esterophilia, of like really loving, like if it's the same artwork, but it's done by Marco Rossi, you're like, oh, okay. But if it's Mark Red from Los Angeles, you're like, oh my God, he's so cool from Los Angeles. I love this artwork and so on. So in Italy, for a lot of time, like we valued higher artists coming from abroad rather than local artists. Now, this is a bit changing. I see there are some new interesting young collectors in Italy that are really supporting more and more the local scene, but that I think is still lingering around in Italy. About me, I guess it just happened. It's because I never collected by thinking, oh, I need to buy an artist from Germany, or like, oh, I need another female artist, or like, I want an artwork about climate change. It just happened very, very organically. So I have works that deal with gender, I have works that deal with climate change, or from any sort of artist, from usually quite young or young, because also is what I can afford, but also established, very established, or even dead sometimes. I mean, the very first artwork that I ever bought was a post-war Italian artist.
Ah, and who was it?
Piero Dorazio.
Ah, Dorazio.
Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah. I saved.
Great artist.
I was 16 years old. I was saving, doing like some random and odd jobs here and there, including PR for a club that I was not allowed to go in because my parents didn't want to, but I was still selling the tickets for the club, and scheming on barber, and then asking my friends to cut my hair. And then with the money that I saved, I bought a print by Piero Dorazio, which is still one of the first artwork that I hang when I move to a new place, because
it represents a lot.
Yeah, no matter like how much now, like my taste perhaps is a bit different. Like nowadays, I'm not sure I would like go crazy about like buying like a print by Piero Dorazio.
Very abstract, by the way.
Yeah, very abstract, abstract. Yeah.
But very good abstract artist, magnificent. I saw a retrospective of his work at the Museum of Modern Art at Torino, I think, and it was very impressive, honestly, to see these works, which have I mean, just a mention of the market. It's grown in value a lot.
Now finally,
recently.
yes. Actually, when I moved to London, I collaborated with the Dorazio Foundation for a while, also to support my studies there in London. It was at a time when they were kind of like starting to restructure and so on.
Okay.
It took a bit longer than expected, but now, the market is growing as as it should happen for other post-war Italian artists that are still not getting international recognition as they should.
Yeah. Salvo, another guy.
Salvo, for example,
right now.
Salvo now is super great, but artists like Munari, I think if some big galleries would like really make work with his estate, it could be the Italian Calder, Dadamanno was an absolute genius. You know, there are Rodolfo Aricò as well. Rodolfo Aricò is comparable to like Stella or like all that hard edge American style of the time. It's just, of course, like you need a system behind to support, which is everyone from curator, museums, collectors, critics, the state itself. And in Italy, sometimes that is a bit lacking.
Yeah. Although there's quite a lot of institutions helping art, no? Or I mean, I remember.
In Italy?
I've mentioned before. I mean, it's a private institution, but the Fondazione Andrea Torrebaudengo, for me, I saw some of the work there, and I was like shocked at how incredible their work is. And
but that's private.
That's private.
That's private.
I mean,
well,
maybe you're like Mexico, which
Prada Foundation in Milan.
Sure,
it's absolutely incredible. Imagine Milan doesn't have a contemporary art museum. There is no contemporary art museum in Milan. There is PAC, Pavilion Contemporary Art, but they do temporary exhibitions. They don't have a collection. There is no contemporary art museum in Milan.
Wow.
It's It's quite
Strange.
shocking when you know that. And it's very good, and I think it's very welcome when private individuals that they have the means and the possibilities create something. Fondazione Prada was life-changing for Milan and for a lot of people that finally got to experience incredible artists in a place that otherwise was not able to host them.
Yeah. And tell me a bit about like your way of collecting, because of course, I mean, I do advisory, and we've spoken about it, or are dealing, however you want to see it. And I've often, I mean, I heard you the other day really saying like, well, I don't really buy stuff as an investment, although you actually invest in younger artists, and for you that's the bet, basically, and it's not about money. No, I mean, of course you have to accommodate to a budget, and there's no, I think there's no illusion in that this is a real thing. And I did mention, for example, the other day, like, I don't think any collector buys just because they want to invest in anything. They're actually always selecting, and every collector is interested in paying a lot of attention into what they like and what moves them and inspires them. Some less than others, some are less educated than others.
In some cases, they don't even see the artworks.
Sure, some is a PDF, which is more maybe an American version of like collecting.
And then the artwork stays in a Freeport.
Right.
And then, so in some cases, it is indeed like, but of course, that's not really related to younger artists or even mid-career. It's more used now for like super mega blue chip artworks, which at the end of the day, no matter how poetically we can look at art, they became assets. So, well, how do I collect? It's been a journey, and it's still definitely a journey that is absolutely beautiful. And I started looking back a few years ago to just like make sense a bit of it, because I always bought. So I have impulsive buying threshold that below that amount, I just get it. Like, if I love an artwork, it just speaks to me. Like, I don't even need to know, like, okay, where the artist was shown, what is he gonna do after, and so on. If I just love it, that's it. It's not even a bet. It's just something that I know that then I'm gonna keep thinking about that work, and then I don't have it, and I'm gonna regret it. So I just get it. Above the threshold, which is a threshold that is fluctuating depending on my finances. Above that, of course, I want a bit more of research, because, of course,
bigger investment. I mean,
yeah, but also because, like, I will have to make choices, right? So I cannot buy everything, if only. And so it's better if, like, I consider other factors in it, and also, of course, by being so embedded in the art world of like running a gallery, an art advisory company, and having a foundation, it's impossible for me not to have not to be affected by certain things that I see in the CV of an artist, or certain voices that I hear, and so on. So in general, I discovered that whatever I bought was very connected to a moment, and they become almost memories of that exact moment of space and time for me in my life. Then is also the connection with the artwork itself, but is also that specific moment. So when I acquired a work by Julian Charrier here in Mexico at Material, it was because I really loved the work. I already knew the artist. I definitely went over budget for that one. But
and what was it? Is a video?
No, it's an invitation to disappear. It's like a wooden plank that he engraved with a print from the 18th century, I think, one of the first explorers to talk about palm oil. And then he charred it down with a flamethrower.
Yes.
Beautiful work. I really love that work. and it's connected not only to like what that work meant, how then it changed my perception of a lot of things. Like up until then, I wasn't thinking so much and so constantly about climate change and like the changes in our world.
Yeah, I saw this exhibition at Lago, no? Lago.
Incredible, no?
Yeah.
And
Incredible.
but it was also connected to the specific moment of being here in Mexico, enjoying, like having tacos together with the artists and the gallerist, meeting a very good collector, Alan Servet, during the dinner, who gave me some incredible advices, and he was incredibly wise and open. So it was all about that moment as well, and that goes for a lot of the artworks that I have.
Interesting.
I guess like if I really have to like read through it a lot and self-analyzing myself, is because since I was a kid, I always collected something. When I was 6 years old, I started collecting the tip of color pencils.
Okay.
Up until I had a jar that was like this big, full of like tips of color pencils. Then I started collecting rocks, which I still do.
Okay.
I have a large collection of rocks and minerals, but in a lot of cases also rocks that I just found around. I mean, on a beautiful beach and so on, which I know that also, like in some cases, you shouldn't do it and so on. But like, you know, I think like a little rock.
You are the guy.
Yeah.
You're the guy stealing all these
Damn it.
rocks. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was listening to De Paris, the auctioneer, the Swiss auctioneer, say something like when collector is already doing it with passion and he's collecting like big amounts and suddenly starts to select a lot and he's suddenly his own curator. It's an artwork, basically. All of the collection becomes an artwork that he has a voice on, and perhaps it's different to how an artist maybe would create something, but it's also an art form, I would say. Like,
no, definitely. And as both as a gallerist and as a collector, you are very exposed and very naked in front of the visitors. So every time, like I like to do dinners at home in London, and I cook Mexican actually usually when I do dinners.
Yes.
It's the easiest way to satisfy
everyone.
Like, 12, 20 people, everybody's allergic or intolerant to something. I make tacos for everyone. Everybody can decide what to put inside. Everybody's happy. So I do Mexican dinners.
It's a universal.
Universal. Food. And, you're very naked in front of the people because they come and like they see the works that you have, and the works that you have at the end, when you collect for real, they are a reflection of yourself. Sometimes it can also be a collection that is reflecting on status, but that's not what I ever did, and so they really reflect you. And so they see certain works and like, oh wow, what the hell, does he like these? Or like, what is this thing? Or maybe like, oh wow, I never realized that you would like something like that. So it's very scary sometimes. To open up so much, like you literally open up to the people. Same thing at the gallery as well.
Yes.
Because the exhibitions that we do is something of that we really, really believe in. And that we think that is interesting for other people to see and know.
Yeah, and especially because the medium that you've chosen as the medium of the gallery has basically a different texture to what a lot of people would digest. Like so, which, as you said at the beginning, like painting tends to be more digestible in a way. I mean, it can be also very like bleh, So I feel like an installation always has an interesting effect on people. But for sure, you're putting yourself out there, in your taste and your beliefs. And I mean, going back to this concern, let's say, of London and how it's placed today. How do you find let's say the UK market in comparison to a European market? I mean, there's always been this sort of a bit of a competition, I would say, between Paris and London. And Paris, I mean, I've heard in the last couple of years, it has become again the capital for art in Europe, and it's coming back there. But what do you think about these dichotomies that exist within these really continental versus a UK world, which is a European world in the end as well?
It's tricky. I mean, first of all, generally, I'm annoyed that this is a dichotomy and not a trichotomy.
or a democracy, really.
No, because like Milan,
Sure.
if the institutions will really back it up, create a plan, like a 5 and 10-year plan for Italy in general, but especially Milan because of many different factors, I think Milan could really be a very strong contender to the throne for like European capital for contemporary art. And so that is, I think, a very missed opportunity for Italy and Milan to actually be in that race because they have all the means to do that.
Is it also this classical frenemy situation with the French as an Italian that you're like
maybe a bit for that as well, but in general I love Milan, so that as a starting point. Then of course now is definitely like Paris versus London in a way. I can see a lot of changes, especially during the Freeze Art Basel Paris period. Now a lot of collectors, they spend a bit less time in London and more time in Paris, or they skip altogether London and go to Paris. The offer in Paris is incredible. I mean, also in terms of collections. I mean, you can spend a month in Paris, things like a different thing every day, and still have like seen nothing. Already la Bourse de Commerce and Louis Vuitton,
the Pinot collection,
and then all the classics. Like I mean, l'Orangerie is like no matter how much you're into contemporary art, but like you go to l'Orangerie and it's beautiful. Every Friday when I go to Art Basel Paris, there is like the breakfast at the Orangerie, and it's beautiful. So Paris is definitely there. I think that the main problem overall in this is that France has always been a bit more unstable than the UK. Now that seems to be changing because in the UK now they're changing laws and these every once in a while. They even removed the tax-free shopping at some point. It became quite a big problem in London. Anyway, all these things. But in general, I think that France has always been a bit more unstable. They are quite keen to revolutions, right? And so, 1 year you have like a government that puts like a 75% tax over 1 million and everybody runs away to Belgium. Then the year after, everybody is more keen on the art and they decrease the VAT and everybody comes back. And at the end, as a business owner,
that's a nightmare,
especially when in a gallery you usually invested on the long term because you have a space, you have your artists, the logistics, so you want a place where you can really thrive for many years. That said, Paris was fantastic for us. We did off-screen in Paris last year, which is a very interesting art fair, very curatorially based, especially moving image installation.
Paris Plus, you mean?
No, off-screen.
Off-screen.
Okay. Amazing fair inside a massive chapel in Paris, and it was one of the most successful fairs we had in a very long time. Every single day there were a different crowd, and it was very, very interesting. The amount of people that Paris is able to attract is it's quite formidable.
How about that detail? Like, what, let's say, public of collectors goes to Paris, and what public of collectors goes to UK, really, you think?
There used to be quite an overlap.
Everyone would go to the same
back in the day. No? Yes, you will do back to back. So like everybody in London, like, see you in Paris. Yeah, see you in Paris. Now I see a bit less of that overlap. I felt like perhaps a bit less Americans and less Asians in London and more in Paris. Also just for the pleasure of the trip itself, perhaps. Of course, there is a certain obsession from extra-European countries towards Paris, and rightfully so, because it's a beautiful city.
So
I see a bit less perhaps overlap, although it's still there. I'd say like maybe probably 40%, I'd say, of people that are in London that are also in Paris, perhaps. Something like that. Also, it's just so easy to do it now with the Eurostar. But I definitely see people spending less time in during freeze London and more time in Basel. They literally do Basel, Paris. They literally do the week, which is something that is not even happening in Basel anymore.
It's a one-day thing.
Maybe 3 days usually, so that you can see Liste, you see Art Basel, you see the Weiler and the Tanguy, and then you go back. You don't want to spend an entire week in Basel. Now, quite a few of our collectors and curators also, I see they spend less days. Paris, they kept them there for the entire week, which is very important for the city, important for the art. Also, Paris, the very interesting thing is the satellite fairs. Paris International, Off-Screen, Asia Now. There is more to offer. While London, they never really got right a satellite fair. Now there is Minor Attraction that is quite an interesting and forward-thinking fair. There is going to be an art fair especially focused on Latin American galleries, Latin American artists, but is not. We don't have a Liste or a Paris International in London, and I think there might be the need for it.
Yeah. And how much of that do you think has to do with like how these two countries, let's say, or a conglomeration of countries, work on I guess have a heritage of being more international, because of course, like you have, I mean, just talking a bit about the colonial world of the UK. I mean, it's clearly it went to some places and the French went to other places, and some of their structure remains. And like, but I for example, I have always felt that in Latin American countries, France has always had a very strong cultural influence, no? For example, in the Francophonie, this whole version of how people are, they are placed in schools of the Lycée Français usually.
Lycée Français.
Right, and there's a Lycée Français everywhere in every country, so there's a lot of attraction towards that, towards the culture. Of course, it's always had that ring of being the cultural place, no? Whereas perhaps UK, London, to me, is always a place where maybe I think of music, I think of perhaps more business, and I feel like the places that I link to UK, like Hong Kong, are commercial sort of places that have integrated also different cultures, like I don't know, Nigeria and I mean, many others, but New Zealand, for example, and so on. And so the Commonwealth created a version, and the Francophonie created a different version. But do you see remnants of this in this notion of collecting, or?
In terms of like London per se, because also London is different from the rest of the country, probably even more than Paris is different from the rest of the country.
Yeah, I agree.
And so London, being such a specific case by itself, is always been and always will be a magnet for people from all around the world, mainly because when you go to Paris, you go to Paris. When you go to London, you go to, perhaps you can be a Notting Hill person, or you can be a Peckham person, or you can be like, it's such an agglomerate of towns, London, rather than being a city, that there is really something for anyone, from like music to culture to any sort of like offering in terms of art, theater, and everything. So that will always be a beacon for that, and the tradition of collecting is very embedded within the society of the UK. Within London, that tradition have been a bit changed in a way just for the fact of the real estate situation. So in London, you know, coming from Italy, like in Italy, when you sign a lease, you sign it for 4 years with already the option for other 4 years. We don't like to move around in Italy. In London, you have contracts that are like 1 year in most cases.
Yeah.
So when you live in a place for 1 year, very strict regulations in terms of like what you can hang, you can drill holes in the wall. And I always did because then I covered them. But like most people don't know how to cover a hole and everything. So why would you even start collecting if that is really not your house? Because then,
Right.
you know, I know people in London that they moved maybe 10 times over like 8, 9 years.
Yeah.
So it just never, for young professionals that will already have the means and the interest to collect, is a bit more difficult. And that changed a bit like the scenery there. In Paris, the for as much as also is expensive to rent in Paris, and at least in my circle, I see there is a bit more stability in terms of like staying in a place and actually decorating it, working on it, because you really want it to feel home.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, some of the biggest collections from the past, then they were created in a very colonial way, but happen to be also in the UK and London. So there is that tradition of collecting. I hope it's going to be passed on to the next generation that for many different reasons doesn't seem to be that connected with the collecting aspect of the art world.
Yeah, well, it was so strong in England, I mean, for a while. Although, I mean, interestingly, I didn't mention, like, well, in Latin America, France has a bigger... But at the same time, I do feel when I mean, at least in Mexico City currently, I have had, like, collectors from London mainly, or New York, you know, like, coming and actually acquiring work. And
here in Mexico?
Yeah,
of course,
and there's even this notion of, like, I think trust funds are, like... more important. The way that you will leave the inheritance to your kids is sort of like more in their minds, I feel, than a lot of collectors elsewhere. So I think that does play a role in making good sort of collections in general, probably in London, UK maybe.
No, but that I'm not surprised that I mean, here, people when they come here in Mexico, unless they have a very bad experience, like perhaps with food, sometimes it can happen, or that you only have a very very artificial experience of Mexico, that I don't know, you only stay in Polanco and you go to Soho House and you say, oh, I saw Mexico City.
Yeah.
But if you like really experience it, I see that like everybody really falls in love with it. A lot of my collectors, and they started coming back and back. Like I'm the number one unofficial ambassador of Mexico in London. Like, I tell everyone, like, come to Mexico. And I invited a lot of people, and then they come, and I have this long PDF of suggestions. I bring them on tour. They really love it, and once here, they're in such a good mood and in such a good situation and good vibe. Pass me this like a bit hippie term, that then they're even more prone to collect, to open their mind, to be curious, even more than in other art fair situation or art week situations where everything feels a bit more rushed, feels a bit more like, feels a bit more forced, because at the end, no matter how wealthy you are, it's always annoying when you have to pay 50 Swiss francs for a sandwich. So you're so happy when you're here and you can have, dinner at Pujol, and it's $100. I mean, in London, it's like an average restaurant. It's the price,
you give your kidney.
Yeah, exactly. So that I'm not surprised about the love that Mexico is receiving, and I think it's very important that like more and more people come, they discover it, and they want to keep coming back.
Another question about like collecting. I do want to jump into Mexico and how you see the scene, but I feel there's a growing conversation about European collectors being more willing than their American counterparts to sit with difficulty, with work that doesn't resolve easily. Do you believe that's a real cultural distinction or a flattening myth?
So Europeans more than Americans.
Are more, prone to sit with, like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, but yes. Then I met quite a few American collectors. Paul Leong in New York has an incredibly difficult collection. Like, I met a few Americans, to be fair, mainly second generation or third generation immigrants. Very conceptual works, really intrigued and everything. But yeah, no, in Europe is another thing. Like Netherlands, Belgium, some bubbles in the UK, they just love something that is
challenging,
daring. Some collections in Europe are mad. Like Alan Servet has a collection that is absolutely incredible for how focused he is and how challenging some of the works are. As the same is valid for many other collectors, Frederick de Goldschmidt, Sigrun Davidsdottir in London. A lot of collectors that are very, very passionate about something that is artworks that other collectors will not even, maybe will appreciate, but will not even think about living with it or having, or even they will not even think that is an artwork for sale. So, kind of like the term Biennale artist, no? And it's like artists that are very, very good at Biennales and invited to all the Biennales, but then in terms of commercial success, it's a bit more difficult because the works are challenging. Well, there are collectors for the Biennale artists.
In Europe.
And especially in Europe, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think here as well you have...
Although also here, yeah, exactly. No, I was about to say, also here, I always really appreciated like how daring some collectors are.
Yeah.
It's also a matter of like having on parity of budget more space. And also having like way more artists here working with sculptures and installation than in other countries because studios are bigger, materials are abundant. So some collections here, oh my goodness, they were like beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So perhaps entering the Mexico City, specifically the art scene here, I mean, we often discuss I've discussed with different gallerists, like, how do you think Mexico City's role in the art market is looking, or in the art world? Is it because before it used to be mentioned that it was a peripheral, like, city of the art market or the art world. I don't have that feeling. Like, more and more I feel like it's actually an anchor, that a lot of people are actually gravitating towards Mexico City as a genuine capital of, basically the capital of Latin American art. I mean, maybe with Sao Paulo, but how do you see that relevance? Of course, you have like very important top 10 maybe fairs, in the world. Sonamaco, which is a very big, Material is starting to make like a real scene, and many others. So how do you see Mexico currently? Or
I think Mexico is very interestingly in the middle of like all the Latin American collectors, also the ones that they don't necessarily like travel so far for other art fairs. Like here, I did Salon Acme a few years, Copperfield did Zona Maco as well, Material now 2 years, which I really, really love doing Material. You meet collectors that you don't meet anywhere else. You meet like someone with a private museum in Guatemala. You meet someone with an incredible collection in Argentina that I never met in any other art fairs, to be fair. And they love coming here. And at the same time, also the Europeans are coming, also for the weather. And the Americans, and especially the Americans with a very open mind and very curious, because I think that already coming to Mexico is already an entry barrier in terms of entry selection in a way, no? Like a collector that decides to travel from New York to Mexico and is not thinking like, oh my goodness, am I gonna be robbed on the street? Well, guess what? I think it's more probable that to happen in New York than in Mexico City. So they are the more curious ones. They're the most adventurous ones. They are the ones that actually also are more willing to support certain difficult practices, or in general be very willing to discover the real city and not only the, resort Yucatan situation of Mexico. They're like, they really want to discover the Mexico. I've never seen, I have to say, many people from Asia traveling to Mexico.
I've seen some Chinese are coming, but
and I hope that will increase in terms of like visitors and also collectors coming during the art fair, because I think it would be super interesting, especially considering that there is a lot of sometimes artworks. I mean, even thinking about Mariana Ledesma here now at Born for Kondo, of the connections in between Japan and Mexico in terms of cultural exchange.
And Korea, those exist very strongly with
exactly.
our neighborhoods here and a lot of heritage of like, for example, like, have you ever eaten this? It's a very dumb mention, but we call it cacahuate japonés. Like the peanuts that are covered with this like solid.
Of course.
Yes. So these are actually a Mexican invention, but from a family that is Mexican Japanese. So it's a funny. I mean, I don't know why I brought this reference, but.
So I hope that more and more the fairs will work on inviting museum patrons. At the end, it's easier when you first invite like a proper group, traveling group, to come here, because I think that it would be very interesting to see like what the collecting part of that world think about like what is shown here. So I hope that will happen even more. But nonetheless, I don't consider Mexico peripheral at all. Of course, Mexico City is not a huge center in terms of collecting, such as New York, London, Paris. But during Art Week, it attracts so many people. And I always appreciate also how local collectors are very, very open to open their houses and their collection to the visitors. And I think that's very inspiring too.
Yeah, for sure. How about other artists that have caught your attention in the Mexico City scene?
That said, actually, sorry to conclude on the other thing, like I don't even know how the structure is and everything, but I think that if because more and more is happening that art fairs, the very large ones are merge and acquiring, right? Now there is going to be Freeze Abu Dhabi, Expo Chicago and the Armory are part of Freeze, Art Basel opened Doha and Paris recently as well, and so on. I think that I hope like that the big art fairs will have a look at the situation here, because I think that if it's either a collaboration or actually straight on acquired, like Zona Maco, and therefore also everything that is satellite around as Material and Acme would boom completely. Absolutely.
Although I feel it's like it's a lot for the city,
No, it is a lot.
That's why I was saying like that condo, this idea of like creating perhaps a second moment where this can happen, I think would be a great thing for the city's art scene, because I feel like there's already like 5 happening the same week, and then we have like pre-Maco. Pre-Art Week in Guadalajara, and then actually pre in Monterrey and pre in Miami.
But that I think is like very well spread out as well. I mean, of course, during Art Week here is madness. Like I sleep on average 2 hours a night, but it's. I love the period of time that is in. Like it's perfect, early February, and I love that there are so many events before. There are a few events after. Kondo is super welcome. I think maybe even one more event. There used to be, is it still on, the Gallery Week here? It used to be in September. Yeah. Week.
I think it's September or October.
But to think about the changes that like a new structure will bring, like, you know, when FIAC was kind of like kicked out by Paris Plus, or Art Basel Paris as it is now, everybody was like worried a bit at the beginning, or nationalistic or this or that, but Paris Basel now is like, it's fantastic. And they created like all these like outstanding events surrounding the fair. It's very, very structured, and at the end, some people travel only for certain brands, and so if you can attract even more, like the reach that they have is like
if some union could happen, would be interesting.
Yeah,
probably.
exactly.
Yes. Or with independent maybe, or something of that kind. You know?
Yeah.
And how about you know, your top choices for artists in Mexico? Do you have some that, I mean, Ledesma is one of them you're mentioning.
Which one's the one that I can afford, or the one that I cannot afford?
Both.
Because
you can play with your imaginary here.
Like, oh gosh, I mean, I love a lot of galleries here and a lot of like their program. Like I think. Oh gosh,
Jana?
Sorry, because I'm not super good with names sometimes, but from general expenses, just with the kind of like mouse, taxidermy, Roger. No? Roger. Yeah.
I guess.
I
haven't been to the...
No, but like the name of the artist.
Yes.
Like, he's incredible. I would love to have a work by him. Really like Andrea Ferrero.
You have a piece.
I have a piece. Yes.
Could you mention this? Because I thought it was a very interesting piece you acquired.
Yes, chocolate. Yes,
chocolate
sculpture, I've been loving like Andrea's works for quite some time. And 2 years ago, she had this. She was part of this exhibition at Tamayo, with an incredible installation of like a massive head of a horse, of a sculpture that is very politically charged. It was the sculpture of like King Charles from Spain, but by the time it was finished, Mexico was independent from Spain, so they didn't know what to do with the sculpture. So a very long conceptual story behind, which I always love and welcome. And it was this massive piece, and then like 2 other pieces inside these massive industrial fridges inside. And I always really loved her practice, and I always found interesting, like, you know, to have an artwork that you can eat. I mean, why not? Or that it decays over time.
A nice chocolate.
Yeah, and so I commissioned her a work, and
so
now soon I'm gonna have it in London, and like I love it. I love her practice. She's gonna do a residency at Delfina in London this summer, which I think is gonna enhance her career even more, and I look forward actually to having her in London, because at least we can talk more often, and I don't have to come here for a studio visit.
Yeah, she's with Enrique Lopez Llamas.
Enrique also I really love.
Fantastic. He had I think it's worth to mention like his piece at TACME, you know, which was a crazy
stunning
installation, huge. Gigantic.
Huge.
Like two floor
ambitious.
Limbs almost separate of himself.
No, very, very, very ambitious works. He recently did something in a theater, like with the curtains open, and there were only his pieces suspended in darkness.
Wow.
Yeah, no, really, really good. Then of like more established artists, recently I saw Gala Porraskim at Kurimanzut, and I'm so in love with their practice, and also at the end, I mean, Kurimanzut, the gallery space, is like, if I would have to choose like one dream gallery to have like almost exactly as it is, it would be Kurimanzut, because I think it's just pure perfection.
And they have a lot of spaces which they can open up. I mean, also there's a room behind, upstairs, where they can curate something different.
They have a tequila mezcal bar on the back. I mean, like, oh my goodness, like, so jealous. But I love my space too. It's a beautiful former church. It's amazing. But I don't have a
yeah.
mezcal bar on the back, you know.
Yeah,
So like
well,
working on it.
why not? Yeah,
Working on it.
you can
In
start.
terms of more established artists, also Pedro Reyes.
Pedro Reyes.
I went to his place and studio many times. Is just such an interesting practice. I love like how the use of materials then combines us with very strong political messages. So the series of shovels made melting like guns from narcos in Mexico, like super interesting practice, and I love him as a person. He's always been so welcoming.
How about his piece, his commissioned piece at LACMA? That has
That one I only saw briefly yesterday about it. That is very controversial,
Yes,
but I didn't
yes,
read
yes.
very well why.
I mean, the crowd is tough. I would say at first, but I think he was criticized for not for doing the face of I guess very standard classical Mesoamerican
Bit stereotype.
female, yeah, stereotype, and
okay.
people don't like it. You know, tough to please the crowd, I think, in general. I think, honestly, for me, LACMA, I just went there like I went for free Soleil, and I mean, it's marvelous, really, what they are doing at that museum. I mean, of course, the amount of money that is going into it.
Yeah.
But it's also about like how it's curated, and honestly, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
I think like really incredible installations, video, just everything I was watching there had actually a very strong voice against probably the current movement in the U.S. towards extremism. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Which I feel we might enter this topic soon, but
yeah, it's interesting the U.S. right now. Well, in terms of other artists here, one that I always really loved actually. I was this close to buy an artwork, then I didn't because I bought 2 other pieces from someone else, but I can't
regret or no regret?
Yeah, of course, regret is always a regret. Like as a like if you're a collector and a bit of a hoarder, like you have way more regrets for something that you didn't buy rather than regrets for something that you bought and you don't want anymore.
Yeah.
Never happened to me to have something that then I'm like, oh, I should have not done it. Like, of course, I should have. What's his name? He has a large installation at Lago Algo behind the bar. He's represented by OMR. He's from Guadalajara.
Yes.
Anyway,
Cruz Villegas, no?
Huh?
Cruz Villegas, no?
No. Ah, damn it. Anyway. Great artist, very ironic, like always using like skulls and skeletons as well in his practice. Yeah.
Is there a close proximity? I mean, I've been to the catacombs in some cities in Italy, and I mean Mexico, of course, has like a big tradition of the dead and the underworld, and I mean, of course, do you feel like a proximity because it's maybe a topic? Maybe it's a more Baroque. Catholic topic as well?
Interesting. I met some people along my way that they absolutely hate artworks with skulls in it. And I met some that are collecting mainly that because they really love the message behind.
Exactly.
Me, how do I feel? I don't have anything, I think, related to skulls or skeletons. I don't think so. Oh, well, I mean, I have like an antique ex voto from Mexico with like also a skeleton. But no, not really. I always felt that it's very different how death and after death is perceived here compared to Italy, for example. Even by both countries being deeply like Catholic, we have a different perception of it. Los Días de los Muertos here is very different than in Italy. In Italy is way more mourning. Like I wouldn't say like necessarily like a sad day, but it's a somber day. While here, and I really have to come here once for that. Like I can see like how it's more
maybe Pátzcuaro. Yeah, where he was born.
Yeah, So, and in Italy, we have this very strong relationship with skulls. Like every time someone go visit Milan, I suggest them to go to the crypt of San Bernardino alle Ossa. That is one of the most beautiful example of memento mori. You have like a chapel that is entirely made of skulls and bones,
Right.
placed in a very aesthetic way, and every person goes there. It's like, oh my goodness, what is this? Thank you so much for telling me. But in terms of skulls. I mean, they can open a very long discussion. But I can tell you that For the Love of God by Damien Hirst, when it was first displayed, and everybody was always, it's tacky and everything and so on. But then I saw it 3 times in 3 different exhibitions. When I saw it in Venice, in Florence, in Palazzo Vecchio, inside the studiolo of Cosimo de' Medici, pitch black, just lights on that. I thought it was just incredible. Yeah.
Sure. Sounds like a marvelous scene, actually.
Very well curated, yeah.
So I want to know how you incorporate, I guess, the Mexican history with art, and how do you, I guess there's a lot of people coming from outside that might exoticize, for example, like the Mexican art scene, or perhaps idealize it to an extent, and so on. We have a tradition with muralism that comes from really a revolutionary response, although it really comes from Dada and the response from Dada in the world, I would say. We also have a lot of surrealist, famous female artists currently that have, and I mean also male, but that have arrived from either the Second World War in Europe, or have escaped the Spanish Civil War. You know, it's like
even.
Yeah, so for sure there's like a big sort of tradition of how, I guess, art has marked the Mexican identity. Today we're like very proudly supporting someone like Leonora Carrington, who was British, but she really took the Mexican identity, or Remedios Varo, who was Spanish and also took this Mexican identity. Or how do you incorporate this history? I mean, because of course, I mean, as a European coming to Mexico feels, I would say, like European in some regards, and others is like an alterity, something that is different and other, and I'm curious on your mind around it.
Yeah, well, in general, I've always traveled more as a traveler rather than a tourist, and I've always been very respectful of the local tradition, customs, and culture. I don't expect, for example, someone to speak to me in English, and actually it's a very good reason for me to practice my Espanol. And these are just like small examples. In terms of like the art, I let the artist do that. Because at the end, the role of the gallerist is not to like, why don't you do this or that? But especially here, doing the residency, when I bring the artists here for 2 months, my main objective is that they see everything. But also customized to their interest and their possible inspiration. So I just throw hints here and there, and then see what sticks with the artist and what they end up creating. It never happened here that there were works that would have been like taught as like cultural appropriation. We had a doubt last year for one artwork by Tai Locke, where he wasn't sure if that was a bit too much appropriating something that was inherently Mexican. But then we did a series of open studios before the art fair, and every single curator, collector, or just visitor of the studio didn't perceive that at all. Actually, they were really loved. They were really interested in how the city or that particular subject was seen by someone with very fresh eyes that had never experienced it before. I have to say, like, I might have romanticized certain things about Mexico City, but that's just because I romanticized everything. In general, like, I love to find beauty in unexpected places. Like, even just like here, I told Misa the other day, she was laughing. I really love the anti-intruder system of like having broken bottles at the top of the wall. It's tragic, you know,
It's
like
interesting,
already
actually.
that you need it.
To me, it's normal. It's like, I'm like, yeah, of course you are gonna break your bottle and put it there.
It's
you know?
very normal for some people. For some other people, they see it as very aggressive. For me, I just like, I don't know, I just really love it. I saw an artwork by Gladys Alonso years ago, but like, I'm talking like 7 years ago, that is still stuck in my memory because of that. I love how the light reflects on the glass bottle. So, of course, there is a certain level of romanticization of like Mexico City. Like every single person comes here from Europe. They take like hundreds of pictures every day. You find yourself taking pictures of those agglomerates of cables on the poles, of houses that are colorful but a bit decadent, and it's just, you think it's just beautiful. Then perhaps in some cases it's tragic. Perhaps, like, you know, the person is not able to like repaint the house. But in some cases, I think there is quite an embrace to this aesthetic that is very, very powerful. Also because it's in an environment that is very well curated. Like I say, I think Mexico City is way more clean than New York or Los Angeles.
Yes.
Like, you go in the streets, it's like really nicely curated. The parks as well. And so then that touch of decadence is not necessarily like seen as like in relation to the development of the country, but in the sense of more like aesthetically.
I mean, and I also think like this I guess a notion of like things not being always perfect, you know, like in Mexico. I feel like there's a
wabi-sabi.
Yeah, and there's this notion of, I feel like, I think everyone will go back to the trees and how that's, I was discussing this with Santiago Evans Canales, like an artist, and we were talking about how, like, for example, in the British and German sort of cosmology, like trees are sort of forbidden. That's one thing, and also if they are there, they are placed within a box where usually their roots cannot grow too much. Whereas in Mexico, it's always like the roots come out of the concrete and they're breaking the street, and you're like, it's another obstacle that you have to deal with, and there's no insurance for it. So sort of, you know. So it's interesting. It's like this notion of safety and this notion of like perfection. It's cultural. It's worked in a different way here than it's done maybe in these Nordic countries, no, for example.
Definitely, yeah.
Although I do feel a difference from in Europe, like Mediterranean countries are clearly like have a different cosmology on like how that works and what it is and how it should be curated or how is the aesthetics.
No, definitely. I mean, I like how wild certain parts of the city are. Like, you walk in some street in even Contesa, like of like how many trees there are is like jungle is really beautiful. Like the freedom that nature has within the city.
Yeah.
With all the obstacles that it creates, yes.
Yeah.
Probably Mexico City is the worst city in the world to have like a pram. Or being on a wheelchair, which is
that's tough. I think that's tough. Wheelchairs are. I'm not sure I've seen a wheelchair, so imagine.
That's the thing, and but I do appreciate and I notice how all the museums they have very enhanced accessibility, even more than in other places in Europe. Like here, always like a ramp and everything to make as easy and as seamless as possible.
Yeah, I guess so. And jumping, let's say, we discussed a bit of the European art scene. We've discussed a bit of the Mexican art scene. And I want to know your view on the current situation with the US. I mean, there's been very clear attack of the current government in the US towards museums and institutions that had, let's say, created a version of themselves that was more, in my view, even more diverse, more acceptable with the history of the rest of the world, and not so colonial and imperial in its version, and it's backtracking very intensely and very fast. I also feel like the type of collecting that happens has been influenced by this notion where collectors don't go for nudes, for example, or like even that has become like we have a nest of birds apparently upstairs. But how even that has affected like the way that people are introduced to art and what they consider beautiful in the maybe very classical way or not, or who dares, as you were saying before, like the New Yorker collector who actually dares to come to Mexico and is not fed by this propaganda, usually has a great experience and so on, but they definitely represent a voice which, I mean, in a way has become, of course, a resistance or a minority, or it's a very weird world. I mean, I feel like we're seeing, because in Mexico it's the opposite. We are like completely, I feel like we're the most progressive version right now in the continent,
Definitely. Like Canada as well.
Canada.
No, definitely. You know what? Like, whilst you were asking the question, like the first thought that came to my mind was what I was going to allow myself to say, and if I should be careful about certain things that I say, if I should be afraid of some things that I say. I'm flying through New York in a couple of days. And also I go sometimes to the US for business, and that I think is like the biggest problem. Like already the fact that like you will have to think like, what if I say something wrong and then that comes out online, and then I get my ESTA revoked and I cannot visit a country because of something that I said, and that's something that we have not been used to that ever in our life, apart for certain countries that are under dictatorship.
Exactly.
Since I never thought of visiting North Korea, I also never thought about saying something perhaps that would be wrong or so on, because never thought of like visiting there. But now the fact that like people are afraid, people that have like two phones because so then in one there is no social media because they're afraid of being stopped at the airport and check the Instagram for a meme that they posted. That's quite tragic. That's incredibly tragic, because art thrives in moments when like the world is open, the minds are open, and you can say what you want to say. But if it's maybe a bit more hopeful, also art thrives even more in moments of opposition and resistance, and
rough
when
conditions.
There is something against. And when I studied at university, I also took a course on advertisement because I was really fascinated by advertisement psychologically and conceptually. And we studied an advertisement that was very interesting from like late 90s, early 2000, I think, of Honda. And it was like cartoonish, and it was a little song. And it was a little song about hate, and about how hate is actually the sentiment, the feeling that actually makes things better and makes the world go around even more than love. Now that could be debatable, but like the conceptual base of that advertisement was that if you hate something, then you're gonna work to change it. And so if now artists in the US, people in the US are hating the situation that there are so much, I think they're gonna create some amazing works, amazing like groups of like people, collectors, curate amazing exhibitions that are gonna change perhaps like how they perceive their country right now. But it is indeed a very difficult situation. The US has always been like quite complex overall in the sense of also how museums operate, that they're heavily, if not only reliant on private funding, which is also always a double-edged sword. On one hand, you're not dependent on the government, great. On the other hand, you're dependent on like public individuals and what they want to show.
Yeah.
And if these public individuals, they happen to be of a certain like very strong political view, or they want to avoid certain discourse and everything, then the museum is not going to show it, because otherwise it will not have the money to do so. And so that is very problematic. But I think that every once in a while, because we take so many things for granted, it's so important. It's not maybe necessary, but it's important sometimes to have a reminder of the things that we took for granted. And Americans, they took for granted, as it should be in a large democratic country, certain freedoms, that now they don't appear to be that like that. And so I think that then, as the situation will progress, they will appreciate and treasure even more that freedom and like really work for it.
Andrea, and why don't you give me some of your projects? What are you working on right now? What is up and coming? What is interesting for your artist or yourself or Copperfield?
We have a few sleepless weeks ahead. Soon I'm going to the Venice Biennale opening.
Yes.
We have an artist that we represent, Oscar Santillan, who is representing Ecuador with a national pavilion. It's the first ever national pavilion for Ecuador, so we're all very, very excited. He created some new work specifically for that. And after that, we're going to also show him in London in a solo exhibition with a massive installation based on a desert looking at itself through its own eyes. It's going to be really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very good. And also another artist at the Biennale is Jane Bastin, who's part of an exhibition there, part of the official collateral events of the Biennale. And then Basel for Liste with a solo booth by Vitautas Kumza, that is the artist that is also here in Mexico City for Kondo. So we're very, very excited for that as well. And then just not to rest during the summer, in July, there will be an exhibition in Puglia by one of our artists, David Ricard, which is going to take a very interesting conceptual spin on olive trees in Puglia.
Okay.
So there's going to be a few interesting weeks, but I'm also very looking ahead of August of staying with my grandma in Tuscany and resting a bit.
Going back with the nonna.
Exactly, back with the nonna.
Well, it sounds very exciting. I think, I mean, this Biennale opportunity seems like one of
that's very big, yeah.
One of a million, opportunities. Yeah. And I mean, best of luck on these projects, Andrea. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Nick.
Piacere to have seen you and just have spoken a bit longer, I guess, than we've had. And I hope you can come back to the podcast very soon.
For sure. And for sure I'll be back in Mexico, that you know.
Perfect.
Next January.
Grazie. Thank you for watching Anthropoid Ethos episode 26. Please find us on Spotify and YouTube.
Oh, yes, we even missed the please find us on...
Please find us.
Follow from the link below.